represent about 18,000 companies in Singapore across all industry sectors. So part of our work, especially the team that I'm in, is actually to promote trade and investment in overseas markets. So I am in charge of the Middle East and Africa markets, and we try to bring our Singapore companies to explore the opportunities in Africa and also help African companies who are actually looking for partners or investors in Singapore.
Which sectors do you find that most investors are looking into, and which countries specifically are gaining traction there?
I would like to say that Africa is still very new to Singapore companies. Not many countries, they do not have the information about the specific industry sectors in Africa, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to promote what the different sectors of investment or trade that is possible for Singapore companies to enter with. So, for example, the fast-moving consumer goods, the everyday products like food, soap products, because Africa is such a huge consumer market, it's going to be growing. So Singapore is a trading country, and we believe that we can actually help to source products from the rest of the world and so supply Africa with these everyday products that you need.
What do you find are, specifically some of the things that maybe Singapore companies or investors struggle with, or when they come into these markets?
There are some of the challenges that Singapore companies are faced. For example, some of the infrastructure problems or issues, like for example the transportation, maybe the access or the communications links are not there yet, so it becomes more expensive to do business, and also maybe financing, because there's not a lot of Singapore banks that actually help to finance Singapore companies' business in Africa, and there's also very few African financial institutions that actually have correspondent banking facilities in Asia, or at least our banks do not actually recognize some of these banks. So it provides a kind of an issue, a challenge, something that which we have to try to overcome, especially with the finance portion of trade and investment.
What are some of the things that you are doing to overcome those so that they don't hinder your investment opportunities here?
So as a business federation, we try to work with various public and private sector organizations to help to overcome these challenges. So for example, we have actually tied up with Standard Chartered Bank in Singapore. I understand that SCB has a very large footprint in Africa. So when we visit Africa, for example, we actually touch base with the local branch officers and ask our businesses to actually network with them and see whether they could actually bridge the gap between the lack of financing alternatives there. So that is one. Secondly, we also work with the trade and investment promotion agencies to actually see how they can actually improve the business environment with the access to financing, and also speak with some of the local banks to see if they could actually explore some of the corresponding banking facilities with banks in Asia or banks in Singapore, for example.
We're always so quick to talk about the challenges, but what's Africa doing right that we should probably still continue doing?
I think one thing is the institutional reform that many African governments are doing. I think in our experience with working with some of the African governments, they are actually very interested to look at the Singapore model of actually improving the ease of doing business, for example, because Singapore does have quite a good reputation in that aspect. So in terms of improving the days that you can start a business, for example, or close a business, how do you improve the transportation links, e-governance, for example. So we have a good example of, for example, in Rwanda, where the government is actually very bought into the Singapore model. I think they've actually formed some of their government institutions on the Singapore model. For example, the Rwandan Development Board is actually sort of like a shadow of what the Economic Development Board in Singapore is like. And so, for example, Botswana, they are very big in like ICT and e-governance, basically just to try to improve processes. So I think this is the right step, the direction that African governments are doing. And I think Singapore companies, we have such expertise because we are a very small country ourselves. So I think we have such expertise to actually offer Africa.